So I tell you all that as far as the background. I have a vested interest in developing students and seeing that they get the support of what they need regardless of the background or the environment they come from. And I'm a firm believer that students will rise to the expectation they have for them. And our job as teachers, as parents, as supportive, community members is to give the students every opportunity to succeed. We need to create pathways for that to happen instead of putting up obstacles. And I do not support lowering the bar and getting more kids over. That's not the game plan. We want to keep the bar up, keep it high, academic standards high, but we want to make sure that we are supportive in a sense to get the students moving. So I've had good success with that in the past, and then I ran into some lady that ended up being in my graduate program down the road, but she bumped into me, and she was a professor at APU, and she said, well, you were Teacher of the Year in Baldwin Park, and then you got a commendation from the mayor of Los Angeles for teaching excellence. Have you ever considered training math teachers or being a STEM professor? I had no idea. Thought maybe I'd do ASB director or something because I like working with students and stuff. She goes, well, you should consider that. Well, so what do you got to do for that? She goes, well, you need to go back to school and get your PhD, and then you can have access to university. So, I don't know, for whatever reason, it sounded kind of fun, so I went back to school a couple years later, knocked out a PhD, and the ironic thing is, my last year in the PhD program, APU called me and said, you know what, we have a need for someone to go out and supervise student teachers in the field. So I carved out some time and did that in the summer. And then after I was done with my PhD, I get a call from APU and says, you're one of 3 finalists for this grad school position in teacher training and development. And I kind of laughed because I'd never applied for the position.
Who put my name in?
Yeah, exactly. So apparently it was this lady, Marty Garlett. I don't know if you're familiar with that name is. But you ever hear this the TV show Romper Room?
Yeah.
She was Miss Marty.
Oh
Really?
my gosh.
Yeah.
What is she, about 100?
No, she's in her 90s. I don't know. Yeah,
probably.
I think she recently died actually. I don't keep up with her much. But anyways, kind of a small world story with that, and that was really my shtick. I didn't know really who she was, but she talked me into doing this, and then somehow she apparently put my application in, but it was an application that I had to fill out to supervise student teachers. So then the secretary calls from the dean's office and says, hey, you know what, if you're really serious about interviewing, we already have you scheduled, but your application's incomplete. You don't have your references in, you don't have this, you don't have that. And I'm like, well, to be honest, lady, I never applied for the job. And she's like, what? So anyways, I said, I'd still like to interview. So give me a week and I'll try to get all this stuff put together. So I ended up interviewing, and the rest is kind of history. So I've been there for almost 30 years, APU.
Oh.
I know. You're thinking, man, he looks so young. How did that happen? So I've had a really great ride, and I was also
teach math most of the time.
I'm in the math department. So I've had a really great ride, and again, I was Faculty of the Year award. Got that. I don't know, it's probably more than a decade now, and I put together a developmental math program again. I did a university math center, visit a lot of campuses of our competitors, and figure out how we can best service developmental students. Because we get transfers in from junior college, and we also have people that come in that are kind of underprepared, that are in different majors other than the sciences or in STEM. And so we have a college requirement of college algebra as the minimum, or statistics, to graduate. So if you come in below that, then you got a little bit of work to do, and most students aren't too happy about that. They want to just do their major like criminal justice or communications or something and forget the math. And I always get that question, how are we ever going to use this in the real world? They regret asking that question to me because I do all kinds of applications in class, and after a while they say, could we just do problems instead? I'm like, no, you didn't. You asked me that question, I'm going to answer it all semester for you.
Yeah.
And then on the high end, I'm the director for the Math Fellows program, which is kind of like GATE for university students. So our highest top performing math students, I mentor them.
Are the majority of those like engineering majors or?
No, we have a mix. So we just kind of merge departments. We have computer science, physics, engineering, math, applied math, and statistics, all in the same department. So I get people from each of those, and they're scholarship kids. They compete for these paid scholarships, and then I get to mentor them for a year or two, and then they go out and do research with professors, and some are going to grad school, so it's good to have a publication with a professor in a referee journal, about this kind of stuff. And once they have that, then they can get into grad school a lot easier and get on in their career and stuff like that. So in terms of my own kids, my youngest daughter, Hannah, the one's at APU, she was in the GATE program for a number of years through Bonita, and then they snipped it. So I had a little conversation with the superintendent last week about that. So it was kind of interesting to hear his rationale. And then with the special needs kid, he ended up graduating from San Dimas because that's where the kind of the special needs program brought him through. So I had kids in both high schools. And so I got a lot of, meet and greet with teachers, administrators, got to get a little bit of a pulse on what's going on there. So for me, it's kind of like paying it back or paying it forward, one of the two things. I think for the most part, Bonita has been pretty good for my kids. They've had a good experience there, and I'd like to keep that going on. I know there's problems, there's issues, there's things we can improve on, and I get wind of certain types of books in the library. Someone shows up on school and they're doing a little juggling show, and all of a sudden they got a little recruitment going on for grooming kids, and so there's those kind of things that I think we could be a little forthright and proactive on, not letting that happen on schools. So anyways, I don't know if you need to know more about me in terms of my profession or my family, but that's kind of the large picture of stuff. And I hope you can tell I'm pretty passionate about teaching and supporting students. I'm a kind of a meat and potatoes guy. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Those are kind of the skills that you're going to need to survive in the outside world, whether you go into trade, whether you go into university. And the social stuff can be a value-added piece, but unfortunately I think it's been hijacked by a lot of agendas, and therefore it has drawn the focus away from the essentials. And so my perspective is why those things in some respects could add to the educational environment for a student. Our fundamental job is to make sure they're, quote, educated. And that education means they have a skill set that they can leave high school with. In basic math skills, they can read, they can think critically, they can communicate, understand, like science-wise, kind of how the world works. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be a physics major in high school, or maybe even do that, but you have a inherent feel of how the world's put together. I mean, that's just basic knowledge in my opinion. But I'm not a big fan of the whole social engineering thing. If I had my druthers, I'd probably be more fundamentalist in my approach to education. I'm not saying I go to military school, because I like having fun and interacting with students. But sometimes I think it is a big distraction, to be honest. It creates more problems than it solves. And I asked the superintendent when I met with him this last week, I said, I've had parents ask me about this whole LGBT thing and, whether they're going to have health-based clinics and give out, these puberty blockers, all that kind of stuff. They have all these kind of questions for me. And so I'm asking you. And I said, so what percentage of the pronoun brigade do you deal with? And he's like, it's probably just 1 or 2%, really, really small amount. So then it kind of tells me that, we shouldn't be spending 90% of the resources on 1 or 2% of the population. Because one of the big pushes that I had given to me at the last school board meeting was this idea that we have a plethora of mental health professionals. And I'm curious, I'm an outsider, right? I don't know all the facts. How many mental health professionals do you need? And is it true that the majority of our students are not mentally healthy? Good question. So, for me, as a future school board member, there's some pressing questions that I'd like to find out, because we have limited resources, and, post-COVID, some of that money is going to be gone at the end of this year, according to the superintendent, and they've hired a fair amount of health professional people. And to your point, does that encourage the fundamental mission of educating students? We have to have support services, right, at some level. You got a nurse, you bust your knee, they got Band-Aids, this and that. I get that. But if you've got a plethora of multiple health professionals, is that taking research away from teaching the fundamentals? I don't.
Well, and
it's a question.
You just mentioned the percentage. If there's only 1 or 2%, how much of the budget is spent on?
Yeah, but that does. Yeah, but that. I mean, that doesn't take into account like people with mental issues.
Right.
So if you got a suicide kid, you got some kid that's struggling with their identity. Oh, my parents won't let me transition, and I really am a girl instead of a boy's body. I mean, those are mental health issues. But I don't think it's the purview necessarily of the school to take the lead on that. It is a parental responsibility, and the parents sometimes aren't involved in that decision loop, from my understanding.